So this is a video on how to calibrate the Enigma lamp board to 1 volt per octave control, and on page 3 of the Enigma lamp board user guide you will find some written instructions on how to do this calibration. We'll be referring to that throughout the video. First of all, you want to look on the back of the module and see which of the sockets the demultiplexer ICs have been inserted into. This is how you choose the order in which the lamps light up. So if you have the 2 demultiplexers in these sockets, the lamps will light up in an alphabetical order, and if you have them in these 2 sockets, they'll light up in the International Telegraph alphabet order. This pair of ICs should only ever be inserted in 1 set of sockets at a time. Don't put 1 here and 1 there, for example, only there or there. And when you're taking them out, it's good to use a proper IC puller tool. The idea is to pull it straight out so that the legs don't get bent. So you hook one side under one edge, one under the other, and give it a nice little yank out. The reason you need to be careful is because you don't want to bend and break off the little legs on the IC. That's what insert into the socket. And when you are inserting an IC, you need to make sure that the little indent, that semicircular indent at the top of the IC, goes where the indent is in the socket and also on the silk screen. Has to go that way around. It will not work if it goes in this way, and it might even damage them. Just make sure that the legs are seated in there nicely, and then give it a nice even push down to seat it in the socket. So once you've decided which encoding you want to use, you can go ahead and turn the module on, let it warm up for a couple of minutes. So while that's warming up, we can take the screwdriver that came with the module, and you want to be turning this trimmer on the side here all the way down. Now this is a 20 turn trimmer, so that means if you turn it 20 turns anti-clockwise to the left, you'll definitely know that it's all the way down. Some of them even make a little click. Can you hear that? So for the next step, we're going to need our 1 volt per octave controller, and make sure that it is a trustworthy one that is actually going to send out accurate 1 volt per octave control voltages. I'm using this Korg SQ1, which is a step sequencer, and what I've done is I've set it so that it's only doing 1 step, and I've set it to chromatic. I'm going to plug that into the input on the left hand side of the Enigma lamp board module, and at this stage what you're going to want to do is send in 1 volt into the Enigma lamp board input. So I've set this potentiometer here so the range is 1 volt, so if it's all the way up, that is sending out 1 volt, which corresponds to 1 octave. So now we're going to look at the Enigma lamp board encoding table, and you'll see that if you send in an octave, the lights that are lit up should be an L in alphabetical mode and an N in International Telegraph alphabet mode. So we're sending in 1 volt, but no lamps have lit up, and that's because we've turned this trimmer all the way down. So now if you want to turn it clockwise to the right, and you should see them light up in sequence. We're in alphabetical mode, so the A lights up, then the B. Keep going, turning clockwise, and you want to go to L, because that's what corresponds with an octave. There you go, we're on L. So now what we're going to do is send in some higher octaves and check that those are correlating to the correct letters. This is much easier to do if you've got a keyboard controller, because you can literally just play in the octaves. But you don't have to have a keyboard controller. On my sequencer, I've got these settings here that set the full range of this potentiometer. So it's on currently 1 volt. So if I switch that voltage range now to 2 volts, I know that the potentiometer all the way up is sending out 2 volts. And if we check with this table here, 2 volts in alphabetical mode should correspond with X, but we've actually got a W. So what do we do about that? Well, we're going to consult the Enigma lamp board encoding table here in our user guide, and going to look down the alphabetical column and see here that we want an X, but we're actually getting a W, so we need to go up with the trimmer. we need to go clockwise to the right. And if I adjust this trimmer clockwise, you'll see it goes to an X. And just go back to 1 volt, make sure you've still got an L, and then an X, and then proceed to the next higher octave. Now obviously that's easy to figure out if you're in alphabetical mode, because we all know the order of the alphabet. But say for example that you're in ITA2 mode instead, you're sending in 2 volts, what you want is an O, but what you're actually getting is a Q. The exact same process applies to the W and X, and you just want to turn that trimmer up so the Q becomes an O. Now just so you don't get tripped up, I'll show you this. I'm sending in 5 volts currently, and if we consult this little table, we'll see that at 5 volts in alphabetical mode we should be expecting an L, but we're actually getting a U. And you might be thinking, in the alphabet, U is nowhere near L. How are we going to adjust for that? Well, it wouldn't be a module based on a cipher machine without a couple of secret messages hardwired into it. And I think if you actually study this column all the way down, you'll see that it does actually make sense, and there is a U next to an L. So again, if I just take the trimmer here and turn it clockwise, the U will expand into an L. And throughout this process we can be referring back to the octaves that we've set before. So the L at 1 volt, we've got an X at 2 volts, and an L again at 5 volts. So now we know that the setting is very close, but we want to test all of the steps in between to make sure that it's bang on. So at this point I think it's very useful to take the output here and plug that into the pitch control voltage input of a 1 volt per octave tuned oscillator, so you can hear the steps as well as see them. As you progress up chromatically through all the characters in sequence, what you're looking for is an incorrect setting like this, where it appears that 2 characters are both lit up at the same time, the C and the B. They're not actually lit up at the same time, they're just oscillating between really quickly, because the incorrect setting is directly in between the 2 letters, and it's just trying to decide which one to light up. So now you need to do a bit of detective work. Look at the previous one, so I've decreased it there, A, B, this should be C, but the B is still lighting up, so I know that the trimmer needs to be turned up, turned clockwise, so that setting rests on a C. There we go. So now A, B, C, and it's all stable. And again, as you're doing this, if you're in ITA2 mode, you're going to have to refer to the table to see the correct sequence. And you want to just keep going all the way up. And it's worth spending a bit of time doing this, going through all of the characters individually just to check that that setting is perfect. Now you probably noticed that as you go up and up in voltage, it's harder to get that trimmer exactly set right. And the reason why is because the errors compound themselves as you go higher in voltage. If you can imagine, each octave has 12 semitones, so you divide 1 volt by 12, that's 0.083 recurring volts assigned as a range for each of these characters. And now if you set that wrong, so you're getting 0.084 volts for example, as you increase the semitones, you're stacking them one on top of each other, that little error is actually adding up, and so by the time you get up to 5 volts worth of semitones all stacked on top of each other, that error is actually making a difference. So you can carry on and chase this calibration all the way up to the limits of your voltage controller, but really it's diminishing returns, and if you're sending through pitch control voltages, which is most likely, within the melodies that you're playing, are you really going to be exceeding intervals of 5 octaves? I don't think so. So just set it to 5 octaves so it's representing that accurately, and that'll be good enough. Well, thank you very much for getting yourself one of these lamp boards, and I really hope you enjoy using it.